Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhurбhavасваha Tatsavitra Varenayam Vargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya Om Sanavavatu Sanobhanaktu Saviryam Karvavahi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti 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 Om. Let's open our books. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Chapter 1 and Section 4. That's where we are starting today. Purush Vid Brahman, that is the name of this Brahman. And this Brahman has, if I'm not wrong, about 17 verses, 17 mantra. So this, as we know, Upanishad, especially in this chapter, the first chapter, deals with a very important subject of creation of the universe. In fact, it's a very difficult subject to grasp by those of extroverted mind. So that means we have to really think deeply. The very word creation, when applied to the phenomena of this universe, has a special connotation. Because when we are talking in relation to this universe, it loses its ordinary meaning. The concept of three different things as the creator, the created, and the act of creation. We normally use these terms with reference to the ordinary matters. But when we talk about the creation of the universe, that doesn't exist. Because over here, the created is not essentially different from the creator. Think about it. So act of creation is also non-different from the creator. Creator does not, in this sense, the creation of the universe, creator does not stand outside his creation, but remains non-different from what he creates and his act of creation. Pay attention to this. Another fact to be remembered in this unique creation of the world by the creator is that it's not an incident in the sense that it took place somewhere at some time. It's not like the incidents recorded in human history. See, like we think that we were born on a certain date, or this building was created, foundation was poured on this certain day. That's not how this creation is. Because time and space, speech, thought, and action, and everything else that is imaginable by the human mind are just the products of this mysterious creation. So that's why I want you to take your mind towards this deeper aspect of creation when we study this chapter. Before creation, the Upanishad says that the Supreme Self alone was. This self, Atma or Brahma, because all these names, they have come into being only subsequently, after the creation. The creation which is nameless, formless, we may call it the being, alone was. And that alone is, and that alone will be. But as human beings, we perceive a world of variety in the place of this universe. We even give the names to this absolute according to our own liking. And that's the reason we ask for the cause. We often say, why was it created? What is the cause of it? So to satisfy our quest, this Rishi in this Upanishad states that the characteristics of the effect are potentially present in the cause. Although the truth is that the Supreme Atma cannot have anything other to it. It's only one. So that's why this concept of Purush Vid, that means like a person. This seer of this Upanishad called this section to explain this creation to us. Purush becomes conscious of himself. And besides this self-consciousness, like I am, there's nothing outside. There was no consciousness of any object, or you can call it an objective consciousness. The first I, or you can call it an I principle, is not the ego-ridden consciousness. It's a pure I. When the reality is reflected on itself, it comes out first as the I, the subject. And this is present in everything. Even in an atom, nothing can be more dear than this I. Why? Because it is a reflection of the original I. That is called Purush Vid. And that's why they say you can meditate on this Purush. Because throughout Upanishad, we have several meditations. So Purush, this Purush, who's not even one, but we call it a non-dual. Because when we say one, then it comes to two also. So that's why I'm saying non-dual. It becomes the first cause. Purush. And this Upanishad gives us a description of this unique transformation of the absolute into the first cause. It says that this single cause became the size of a man and wife. He said it's a two in one. 。 . 。 . 。 . 。 . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . The single underwent a split in itself, and that became two. So in spite of this two, the one remained as the one. Even these days, what do we say? It's a unit. It's one. Often when we see people truly in love, we say, two bodies, but one Atma. Because we see so much likeness in them. So we have to understand that all the subsequent multiplicity also is without losing the original unity. That is a non-duality. So in this creation of the universe, the first cause, the Purush, is not destroyed, nor depleted, not even touched or affected in the least. And yet, he is present in every atom of his vast creation. See, unlike when the tree is born from the seed, seed gets destroyed. Sapling comes. From that sapling, the small little plant comes. Sapling is gone. The little plant has to die to become a tree. First, the medium-sized tree. So in order to take the form of a tall tree, the medium-sized tree has to die too. But over here in this creation, he is present as a Purush in every atom of his vast creation. This is the great mystery of creation. A mystery because human logic and reasoning cannot explain this projection of the universal phenomena in the non-dual absolute. That's why it's a mystery. It is so deep. It is so subtle. Our human mind cannot conceive it. How can God be everywhere? How can the Purush be everywhere? Without changing the Purush, how can everything else get changed? Another part of this section is the desire. The desire in a person is a psychological contradiction. This contradiction was perhaps in the original being itself. We know that our desire for an object presupposes that the object of desire is outside. There's something outside of us and we desire it. External, distinct from us. Something which we don't have, we desire to have it. If it is the external and different from us, how can we possess it and make it one with us? On the other hand, if we presume that the object is within us, why should we desire for it? It's already part of us. The urge for reproduction, which is a part of the original cosmic urge, is to become two. And at the same time to remain one. Both simultaneously. So for effecting indivisibility, divisibility is accepted. That is the reason this Upanishad gives us. It's almost like there's a both pain and pleasure in desire and fulfillment. everybody is only one half, and one half is always dissatisfied. It wants to grab the other half and become the whole. The subject, which is Manu, the first man, is one half. And the object, which is Satrupa, the first woman, is the other half. I'm sure you are familiar with these terms, Manu and Shatrupa. In other words, when the one split into two, the split part, which has now become the other, was there before too. Having come from the same Purush. So the consciousness of one Purush is in both. Even as the same blood flows in the brother and the sister, they have the same status. That's why they say that one is not superior to the other. The subject always wants to possess the object. An object tries to escape by assuming another form. So the subject also assumes the other form. And there's a commingling of both. And that's how the creation of the various species comes about. And in this section, we'll see the mantras related to that. This Upanishad wants to point out through the allegorical description that one who wants to get out of this sansar should know that it is the Purush himself that is the subject. That's why we meditate on the Purush. But the desire, the fulfillment also came from there. So this is the knowledge. This kind of a knowledge, when we understand, will cut all desires at its root. Otherwise, the desires are many and then irresistible. So as I told you earlier, this is a long section, 17 verses. Each verse is pretty deep. And there's a lot more after this also. So this is just a beginning of it. And let's look at some of the verses also before I go into the details. So verse number 1 of section 4. Atmev yagra asit purush vidha. So anuvikshe na anye atmano pashyat. So aham अस्मीत अग्रहे व्याहरत ततो अहम नामः भवत तस्मात् पयेत अनुमंत्रितो अहमये इमं ते अवग्रह उक्तवाथा अय नाम प्रभूते यदस्य भवति स यत पूर्वो तस्मात् सर्व समा सर्वान् पापमन औषत तस्मात् पुरुषः औषति ह वे स तम यो अस्मात् पूर्वो भूषति य एवं वेद. So in the beginning, this universe was verily the self. And that's what I try to explain it to you in the introduction. So in the beginning, the universe was verily the self, Viraj. And we talked about that word previously. In the form of a person. He pondered and beheld nothing else but himself. Okay, it was only one. He first said, I am he. Therefore, he got the name I, Aham. Hence, even now, when anyone is accosted, he first says, it is I. And then tells the other name that he has. So that means the name which is given to us at birth or after birth, that comes after first. It is I. Because he was the first among the aspirants to the status of Prajapati, and before this whole group consumed all evils, therefore he is called Purush. He who knows thus verily consumes him, who wishes to be Prajapati in advance of him. And these evils are all the obstacles. That's are the evils. Okay, this avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh, those are called the evils, according to the scriptural injunction. So what is he saying over here in this very first mantra? He says in the beginning, before the creation of the bodies, because we look at the creation as the bodies. So he says, before the creation of the bodies, all this was just the self, undifferentiated from the body of Viraj. How was that self like? Because we often wonder, how was it? Because we look at all these forms and we say, oh gosh, beautiful creation. But before anything was created, it was only Viraj. So this Rishi says, he was like a human being in shape, with the head, hands, and other limbs of the body. He was the first to have a body. Often we think that creation started from the amoeba and all that, unicellular, and then it became more and more complex. But our Upanishads, they contradict that. He was the first to have a body. He is referred to as the firstborn Virat, the first embodied being. So Virat was the first person. He had a body and was endowed with the capacity of willing, acting, and knowing. And he then naturally felt his being existent and expressed to himself, I am. So even today, we see the effect of that. When somebody asks us, who are you? What do we say? I am. We identify ourselves with the cause, the first embodied soul. But later on we say, I am so and so. But first, this is I. So the name or anything else relating to our status or where we live, it all comes later on. First, I. This being is now known as Purush. How did he come to have this? He was the first among all beings who burnt the entire lot of evils in the form of attachment to sense objects and ignorance. And we saw that in the previous chapter also, previous section. So he came to bear this name as Purush. And Purush really means first burned. That is the meaning. Purvam Anushat. So by identifying himself with the pure vital force, he killed the evil of attachment of the senses by the virtue of meditation and rises above through the meditation alone. This is what he's trying to tell us. And one who knows this, that means the practices of meditation, and a person who can consume the evil and sins becomes identified with the universal spirit. Cosmic Purush, the firstborn, surpassing all who want to exceed him, but whose practice and meditation are deficient. Okay? So in order to know this, who we are in reality, we have to go through the sadhana. Okay? So now in the next verse, so अबिभेत तस्मात् एकाकी बिभेति स हायमिक्षाम चक्रे यन्मद नास्ति कस्मानो विभेषिति तत् एवस्य भयम वियाय कस्मात् अभ्यस्येत द्वितीय पदे भयम भवति. He was frightened. Therefore, one is frightened when one is alone. He reflected, since there's nothing besides myself, what am I afraid of? From that alone, his fear departed. For what should be afraid of? Fear comes only from a second entity. We are never afraid of ourselves. We are always afraid of somebody else. So he says, I'm the only one. Why am I afraid? So when he did not see anything, first, when we don't see anything whatsoever, it's natural to become afraid that there's nobody else. It's quite natural. We have all experienced it, that when we are alone, everybody is afraid. The term fear refers to his innate desire for the preservation of the body. So Virat is the sum total of all gross bodies in the universe. So the term fear must apply to the universal desire of self-preservation. So that's why I said we have all experienced it. So on account of this likeness with Virat, one is afraid when alone. And after that, he observed that there was none except his own self. He thought about it and he became free from the fear. See, like we are home alone and there's a sound. We get afraid. But when we realize that sound was just my child is talking, or a person who I'm living with, the sound came from there, then there's no fear. So this has happened. He became free from fear because fear presupposes a second entity and duality. And a duality is due to our own ignorance. Because in absolute reality, there is no such a thing as a duality. I'm talking about the absolute. So it was an error on the part of the Virat to have conceived of a second thing in ignorance, which caused fear in him. So when he attained the truth by self-reflection, he realized that none but he was there. And at the dawn of this knowledge, fear, which was an effect of ignorance, vanished. So this mantra says, from that alone his fear departed. When we study Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna talks about the qualities of a jnani or a devotee. Fearlessness. That means if we call ourselves a devotee, a bhagat, do we see the oneness with everybody or not? If we see the oneness, then there's no fear. Because fear is only when there's a two. So this is the knowledge he's talking about in this Upanishad. Because from knowledge alone, this fear departed. So fear arises only on account of duality. Remember that. And duality is a product of ignorance, avidya. This is a well-established fact that there is no such a thing as duality. It is only due to ignorance of the nature of the truth, we feel the existence of second entity. Okay, there's no two Atma. There's no two gods. Just think about it. It's only one. So let's look at another verse, verse number 3. Sa ve na ev remehe tasmat ekaki na ramte sa dvityam ichat sa he tavanas yatha istri pumansaho samparikshvakto sa imam ev atmanam dvedha patyat tataha patit patnihi cha abhyavatam tasmat ridham galam iv swa iti samaha याज्ञवल्कः तस्मात् यम काशः स्त्रियः पूर्यत एवः ताम समभवत ततः मनुष्यः अजायन्तः. Verily, he did not at all feel happy. Therefore, one still does not feel happy when alone. He desired a mate. He became of the size of a man and wife, embracing each other. He divided this very body into two. From that, husband and wife came into being. Therefore, this body of a man is one half of himself, like half of a two-celled seed. So said Yagvalkya. So this is the Rishi's name who wrote this. Hence, this void is verily filled by the wife. He united with her. From that, men were born. So this is verse number 3 of this section. So his fear left him with the help of that knowledge, but he was not happy. So fear was not there, but he was not happy either, because loneliness became monotonous to him. So in the long run, it must have made him tired. He was not delightful because he did not acquire the objects of desire. It is within the range of everybody's knowledge. That means we all have experienced it, that we become happy when we achieve the object of our desires. Even though it's momentarily, but we do feel happy. And in its absence, we experience a type of mental distress. And another term for that is unhappiness. So delight means pleasure. And pleasure is an outcome of objective perception, association with the external objects. And when it comes to relationship, it's a relationship with somebody else. So it's not just the objects alone, but the relationships also. When we are in the company of the people we love and like, sure, there's a delight. So when one is alone, one feels unhappiness. It's a very common feature in human beings to feel unhappy when we are deprived of the objects of our desire. And normally afraid and unhappy when a person is lonely and single. We see that emotion in people. So over here, we are talking about the Purush, the firstborn. So he, the first Purush, wished for a mate to remove his unhappiness, which was an effect of his long loneliness. Then what happened? This verse says, he grew as big as a man and a woman, and procreated human beings from there. So this is how he's explaining how the creation came about. So from one, you can see the many. But still in the many, there is that one. So that Purush is present. That's why we call the Atma the Purush. That Purush is in everybody and everywhere. Only the forms became many. The Purush did not become many. Purush is still one, non-dual. So we'll start, excuse me, next week from verse number 4, and we'll see how this rest of the chapter, he keeps on explaining this creation to us. But try to meditate on what we just learned. Meditating on that one. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for joining.